K-pop in Japan, it's been seeing a bigger resurgence in the country in the last couple years, especially among young females. Because while K-pop used to be big in Japan, it started slowly declining by the end of 2013. But with K-pop flexing its muscle around the world, Korean pop is slowly reviving in Japan. Now, as a quick disclaimer before I go on, I am not saying that K-pop is as big as J-pop or J-rock. Not at all. It's not even close. Those two genres are so much bigger than K-pop, and their influence in sales would pretty much dwarf K-pop's. But at the same time, it's also wrong to say that K-pop is not popular in Japan either, because it is a pretty popular niche within the country. And the reason why I'm saying this disclaimer is because every once in a while, I'll get DMs or YouTube comments or emails from J-pop fans saying that I'm over-exaggerating K-pop's popularity in Japan, or that it's not popular at all, which I would heavily disagree with, because as we'll go through this video, the evidence, stats, and my own anecdotal personal experience will show that K-pop is no joke in Japan. It has a decent foothold, especially again, among female youth. So with that being said, let's talk about why Korea is the new place for global stardom for many Japanese youth today. To see the influence of K-pop in Japan, you just have to look at Korean reality music shows, as well as the newer groups in Korea today. Young female teens and early 20-somethings have taken a liking to K-pop. From 17, TWICE, and BTS, Korean music are among the big acts. Shows like Produce 101 had some Japanese contestants, as well as groups like IZ*ONE, TWICE, Treasure, aespa, and Enhypen, which all had Japanese members in them. Many of these Japanese members that now work as K-pop idols grew up watching Korean stars. There's also a growing number of Japanese groups that have patterned themselves off K-pop. Take Japanese girl group Magic Hour, for example, which looks like it should actually be pronounced as Magicore, I guess, until I read the Japanese name. In any case, Magic Hour has that K-pop girl crush concept going for them. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, they probably have some help from Korea, you'd be correct. As we see here, the video was produced by 2 Swedish and 2 Korean producers. Heck, Magic Hour and their label, Pop Teen, told viewers if their music video got more than 500,000 views in 2 weeks, they would go to Korea to debut. Former AKB member and Produce 48 contestant Miu Takeuchi traded her 10-year career in Japan for one in Korea. Then we have the Japanese turned Korean city pop singer Yukika, who went to Korea and has made a great career for herself, carving out her niche as a city pop singer in Korea. And then we have a few music groups within Japan that are adopting the K-pop way, with 2 groups in particular that debuted in 2020. JO1 came from Produce 101 Japan, a Japanese group that's trained up in the K-pop style, with the flagship show Produce 101 originating in Korea. While NiziU is a female J-pop group that's created by YG Entertainment. The show Girls Planet 999 also features females from 3 countries, Korea, Japan, and China. But if you're still not convinced of K-pop's popularity in Japan, it's time to break out the stats. And I know K-pop fans love their stats and numbers. Going off Statistica's 2019 data of popularity of South Korean music in Japan, 39% of Japanese rate K-pop very popular, with an additional 25% saying it's quite popular. That's an estimated 64% of Japanese people saying K-pop's popular in Japan. On the other hand, 25% say it's so-so popular, and only 5.6% say it's not popular in the country. So it's safe to say that many of Japan's youth today either know about K-pop or are K-pop fans themselves. These days, more Japanese teens apply at K-pop auditions held in Japan, or they just move to Korea to go to dance school in the hopes of becoming a K-pop trainee. As this Reuters article details, 2 17-year-old Japanese teenagers, Yuka Hasumi and Ibuki Ito, moved to Seoul to try to become K-pop trainees. These 2 teens paid $3,000 a month to live out their K-pop dreams. Many Japanese teens wanting to become idols realize the same thing, that K-pop's the way to go if they want international success and recognition. These teens see the headlines, how K-pop's taking over Asia, if not the West, that K-pop acts are a lot more popular than J-pop ones. And these Japanese youth see why. They see the professionalism, the slick dancing, the intense training. They see the polish that these K-pop singers have, and they want that same level of training. And to do that, they have to go to Korea. So when it comes to Japanese trainees and singers making the move to Korea, it comes down a lot to more branding, marketing opportunities, and profit, with another big reason being instantly recognized in Asia. Because right now, the trend isn't just limited to Japanese teenagers wanting to make the move to Korea, but teens from all over Asia are moving to Seoul in hopes of a K-pop career. Because K-pop is the trendy new it music in Asia, because it's cool to listen to, and it gets a lot of recognition within Asia. While many music labels desire to break into the US market, Asia is still the most important market for pretty much all Asian countries because it comes down to distance. For instance, it's a lot easier to travel from, say, Korea to Singapore or Korea to the Philippines for overseas concerts rather than fly from Korea all the way to Great Britain or from Korea to the US. The sheer Asian fandom is also another huge factor. K-pop has huge fandoms in Asian countries such as Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand. These countries used to be dominated by J-pop, but no longer. These days, fans from most Asian countries are all about that K-pop. J-pop acts that visited Asian countries used to draw in huge crowds 10 to 15 years ago. Now these same J-pop acts would pale in comparison to K-pop acts, where Korean singers and K-drama actors will easily get 3 times more fans in attendance. More and more Japanese trainees and singers are also noticing this trend. Because of the vast reach of K-pop and its idols, the marketing opportunity for K-pop stars internationally is a lot greater than their J-pop counterparts. Many cosmetic brands will reach out to K-pop stars to promote them on makeup, hand lotion, and facial cream, since K-pop puts a heavy emphasis on looks. Fashion is another big factor, as many K-pop stars will be featured on Uniqlo, Zara, and other big clothing brands to show off both a brand's clothing and K-pop stars' physique. Food and beverage brands are also frequent sponsors of K-pop acts, as they move a lot more sales with just a Korean singer's face on their ads. One notable exception is IU. If you put her face on any food or beverage brand, she alone will move sales, as the Korean alcohol drink Chamisul had a 58% increase in sales to China. Or another example is NCT being on Coca-Cola ads in Korea. As you can guess, had an uptick in the soft beverage soon after their faces were shown next to Coca-Cola. Video games such as League of Legends have K-pop stars in them, with the group Idol being part of KDA being the most famous example. Car brands are also in the CF game, with BTS representing Hyundai. These marketing and ad opportunities are just some of the possibilities K-pop stars have if they become popular, and K-pop can give Japanese hopefuls this very opportunity. A fact that's not gone unnoticed by Japanese trainees. One of the biggest draws for Japanese trainees, as well as veteran singers, to K-pop is the training they'll get. K-pop's training is undoubtedly harsh and strict, but it's among the finest training to become an entertainer. When Japanese fans saw what Korea was doing in training up their idols in the late 2000s and 2010s, they were impressed. And while there's some backlash among Japanese that K-pop's manufactured, which, if I have to be honest, they do have a point, these same naysayers can't deny that K-pop groups are polished from their debut, and that K-pop idols' training is a lot higher in quality than your average J-pop idol. Now, I keep bringing up this quote from a man or woman, J-Sprite, but it's true. And I'm thinking this J-Sprite quote is such a meme on his channel at this point, but I have to do it again. In J-pop, fans want to see their horse grow into the fastest horse one day, but you're just pretty much nurturing that horse. You got time. But in K-pop, fans want the fastest horse now. You have no time at all. You better be good from the very start. Japanese fans were thinking, you know, we kind of want that fast horse too, and now. Though don't get me wrong, there are some Japanese idols that can sing and dance, as well as look aesthetically pleasing. The guys from EXILE and their company LDH, for instance, can dance with the best of K-pop idols. Yet your standard K-pop group would be expected to have good dancing, catchy vocals, and stunning looks from their debut. With that level of production, Japanese fans were impressed with how K-pop revolutionized Asian music by the end of the 2000s. The next one is looks, which K-pop is known for. Taking a look at this girl group, Girls' Generation, and this guy group, 2PM, you can tell right away that they're pretty and handsome respectively. And these strikingly good looks gives Korean celebrities that aura of instant beauty. Ever since the Korean drama, Winter Sonata, graced Japanese fans back in 2002, many Japanese females started liking the image of a Korean guy. This fantasy of the Korean handsome guy carried over to K-pop, where pretty much every male idol had the looks and physique to back it up. But Japanese male fans aren't left out either, as groups such as Girls' Generation Kara and tiara would redefine Asian beauty during the late 2000s and early 2010s. K-makeup and fashion would further push into this, as many Japanese fans liked how K-pop and K-drama celebrities looked. This K-pop standard of beauty soon became the standard throughout Asia, where if a star didn't have the Korean look, many fans wouldn't consider them as pretty or handsome as their K-pop idols. The female K-pop and J-pop group stigma is another big part. Namely, that female K-pop groups don't really suffer any social stigma, since it's very westernized and accepted as cool and trendy, whereas female J-pop music suffers from the otaku image and J-idol stigma. Female J-idol groups are seen as cute, innocent, and young, and cater to female teens, male college students in their 20s, or an older 40-plus male demographic. With female K-pop groups, on the other hand, they're presented as more mature, adult, and sultry when they get older. But don't get me wrong, K-pop does straddle the line quite a bit, as many K-pop labels make their female groups show a little bit too much skin, like in many J-idol groups. So there's both pros and cons to both music industries. But for the most part, K-pop is seen as more normal to the average person, whereas J-idol groups can be seen as weird to foreigners not used to J-pop. And for some female Japanese trainees, they can appreciate this fact, as they don't have to go against the stigma or negative bias of being lumped into another AKB48 or Nogizaka 46. And in many circles these days, listening to K-pop is actually cool, as it's a popular musical genre. The iconic dances are also very memorable, and yes, another big reason, as many of K-pop's most iconic dances are remembered to this day by Japanese fans. During K-pop's second generation, this era had some of the most iconic dances in modern K-pop history, from Girls' Generation's G-leg dance to the Kara suspender butt dance, to Super Junior's Sorry Sorry. These songs are instantly memorable just from their choreography alone. Japanese youth would start dancing to these iconic dances, and more Japanese fans would watch K-pop music videos and remember that particular video from, yes, that choreography. These memorable dance routines would become a big reason why Japanese teens would one day apply to K-pop companies to become K-pop stars. The marketing and branding from performing an iconic choreography are immense. A memorable dance routine is a major part of a group going viral, and iconic dances give an idol a ton of clout and popularity, as their routine will forever be remembered in K-pop lore. For some trainees, they want to make an impact in the music world and be remembered, and what better way to do that than having your dance being performed by cover groups and other K-pop idols? Which leads to the next point. A group that's recently debuted in Japan and already in just 1 year have their iconic moments. And that would be NiziU. They play a big part of K-pop's growth in Japan. Now you might be asking yourself, isn't NiziU a J-pop group? Well, yes, you would be right. They're also trained under JYP Entertainment, making them have a lot of K-pop influences. So while the group sings in Japanese and are, yes, ethnically Japanese, a lot of fans can still feel that K-poppiness within them. And I would say that many fans would actually consider them a K-pop group, even though they are technically in Japan. The group has a huge pre-debut song with their YouTube music video pre-debut, Make You Happy. The song got a staggering 195 million views in just 6 months. NiziU would later release their maxi single, Step in a Step, hitting #1 on Japan's Billboard and the Oricon. A huge deal for a group that just debuted under a non-Japanese label. NiziU has a slew of endorsements from various Japanese businesses, and they're already being invited on the prestigious Kohaku Utagassen, or the Red and White Battle, a show that happens at the end of each year in Japan. Being on the show is a huge deal because only the biggest acts that sell the most are invited. In just 1 year, NiziU was a huge success, as many people, companies, and sponsors already trusted the group based on their insane potential and the backing of JYP. And the reason for all this is because of that K-pop influence, that K-pop soft power that it has in Japan. Nikkei Asia breaks down JYP's strategy very well, so I'll paraphrase their words and add a couple of my words here and there. JYP's NiziU team has been using K-pop marketing strategies to market idols in Japan, but instead of doing the whole AKB48 route of growing that pony slow NiziU are the girls next door that rise and become K-pop stars fast. Rather than the focus of getting encouragement from fans, with NiziU, it's all about that underdog story. The struggle of the ladies finding their way in the J-pop industry and making it big. He wanted the girls not just to show off their skills, but express their personality, as JYP knows to become popular in the music industry is not just about pure skill, but instead humanizing idols and having those idols resonate with fans. And by making NiziU the girls next door, the girls that are chill and normal, the group would be relatable. For many Korean professors and music critics, JYP's strategy led to NiziU's remarkable growth in Japan. In turn, NiziU became that best, fastest horse right away. There's no 3 to 5 year period of that pony eventually growing up. The creation of NiziU is part of JYP's strategy called JYP 3.0, a plan that calls for globalization by localization. By creating groups in a native country, making them fluent in 2 or more languages, and training them up in the K-pop way. So when the Japanese take a look at NiziU, even though they're trained up in the K-pop ways, they are still considered a J-pop group. From the results of JYP 3.0 and the NiziU strategy for domination thus far, it looks like JYP's plan has worked to perfection. Having Japanese members in K-pop groups is not only accepted these days, but widely sought after, as many K-pop labels are looking towards Japan for their next star. No longer are token singers like BoA and TVXQ are the rare K-pop acts in Japan in the 2000s. These days, there's Japanese members in TWICE, NCT, Treasure, Enhypen, and IZ*ONE, just to name a few. And JYP took this a step further with creating an all-Japanese group with, yes, NiziU. One major advantage of Japanese singers going to Korea to train is that eventually they can go back to their native Japan and perform there without any barriers, with knowing Japanese being a huge obstacle to K-pop stars touring in Japan. Anyone that studied Japanese knows that it's a difficult language to learn. But at the same time, Japanese audiences want to connect to K-pop stars that can speak their language well and are well versed in Japanese culture. Naturally, Japanese turned K-pop stars won't have any of these problems. K-pop labels learned fast that Japanese fans want audiences to relate to them by knowing the language, by knowing the culture, and by staying in the country and producing Japanese singles and albums. And there are not that many Korean stars that can do all this, as it actually takes time to speak Japanese well as learn its culture. If the recent K-pop groups admitting more Japanese members are any indication, K-pop is experiencing a new surge in Japan. K-pop is the new standard of Asian pop, and many Japanese teenagers know this. The immense marketing and branding opportunities are enticing for these Japanese hopefuls. With the last several years having K-pop labels admitting more Japanese trainees and former J-pop stars, don't be surprised to see future K-pop groups with at least one Japanese member in it. So thank you for watching this video, and I'd love to know your take in the comments below. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy, everyone. 2 other things to mention. If you want real talk with no fluff on how the K-pop industry actually works, then please grab my free ebook by signing up for the email list below. And if you like what we do here at Popstory, then please consider supporting us on Patreon. It's not necessary, of course, and we're honored if you just watch our videos. But for those that do support us on Patreon, we have some cool perks waiting. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy, everyone.